Today is October 10th, 2020. The 2020 election is only 3.5 weeks away from today, 24 days to be exact. And in this election, because it's a presidential election year, you have the presidential election taking place, but you also have the Senate elections and the House of Representative elections taking place on November 3rd, 2020. So I want to talk about specifically in this video my prediction for the outcome of the House of Representative elections for the 2020 election. And the reason why I decided to make a video on this now, even though I already made a video on this 2 weeks ago talking about my prediction for this election, the reason is because FiveThirtyEight.com, they recently came out with this model for their projection model for the House of Representative elections and how they think the election is going to turn out. When I made my video 2 weeks ago on my prediction for the House of Representative elections, this model wasn't out yet. Back then, FiveThirtyEight.com only had a prediction model for the presidential election and the Senate election. They didn't have one for the House of Representative elections yet. But they just recently made one. I think it came out a few days ago. And this is definitely more trustworthy than any of the other models that are out there. This is more trustworthy than the models that I showed in my previous video a couple weeks ago, because the guy who made this model, Nate Silver, the guy who makes all these models on FiveThirtyEight.com, he's a genius. The way he makes these models, they factor in all sorts of different things. For one, they factor in the amount of time that's left until the election when deciding what the chances of a certain candidate winning the election or winning re-election. But he also factors in opinions from experts, and that's what I'll show you now. His models, more specifically his models for the House of Representative elections coming up. Before we actually look at what this chart says, I would first like to show you that he added 3 different modes for the House of Representatives and for the Senate elections, his prediction models for those. For the presidential election prediction model, he only has one normal mode, but for the Senate and House, I guess he decided to add 3 different modes for this. The first one's the light mode. It just says this mode of the model just shows the projection model if you only factor in the polls but nothing else. But then he also has the second mode, which is the classic model. I guess that's what he calls it. And in that, he factors in not only the polls but also fundraising numbers and voting patterns of the past and a few other things. And there's also the third option, which is what I'll be showing in this video when looking at the House of Representatives projection model. That's what I'm going to use. And this mode for the model, it factors in, besides all the other things such as polls and fundraising numbers, it also factors in experts' ratings. And that actually changes up the projection model a bit from the other 2 modes. I guess the expert ratings change up the models a bit because the experts can sometimes see things that pure numerical figures like poll numbers or fundraising numbers can't tell you. Like with expert predictions, with expert ratings, they can also operate off a more anecdotal piece of evidence, such as conversations they've had with voters. That's something that you can't really capture as well in poll numbers or fundraising numbers. So I'll be using the deluxe mode in this video because I think that it'll be the most accurate in coming up with a prediction for the upcoming House elections. So let's actually look at the numbers that this prediction model gives now on FiveThirtyEight.com. It says that Democrats are clearly favored to win the House of Representatives, and that would make sense. They already have control over the House of Representatives. They already have control by quite a few seats. Currently in the House of Representatives, there's 232-ish Democrats. That number fluctuates from time to time because of 1, resignations, and 2, deaths. And the Republicans have around 198 seats in the House of Representatives. There's also one libertarian, his name is Justin Amash, but he used to be a Republican. So Democrats have 36 seats more, around 36 seats more in the House, anywhere from 34 to 36, that number fluctuates. But they have almost 40 seats more in the House currently than Republicans do. And because of that, it's really easy for them to keep having a majority in the House when, 1, they already have a majority by almost 40 seats, and 2, this election is looking like it's going to be a blue wave election, not only in the House of Representatives but also in the Senate and the presidential election. If you look at the presidential election and the polls that have just come in the last few days, Biden is doing spectacular. He's doing phenomenally well against Trump in the polls. Biden is up against Trump by around 9 percentage points. That is insane. Back in 2008, when Obama won in basically what was a landslide against McCain, Obama was around 7-ish percentage points up in the polls against McCain around 3 weeks before the actual election. Now Biden is 9 percentage points better in the polls than Trump currently is. And considering the election is only 3 weeks away, I think that Biden has at least a 90% chance of winning this election, if not more. I almost want to say, like right here and now, that Biden will win, but there's always that chance that Trump will make a comeback. You can never, nothing is ever out of the picture. I made that one clickbait video a couple of days ago saying in like a definitive manner that Biden will win this election, but that was just clickbait. I just put that in the title so more people would click it, but I explained in the video, Trump still has a chance of winning. That chance is not good at all, not remotely good. Keep that in mind, but there is the chance. But the chance also is definitely worse than in 2016. In 2016, Trump had a good 30% chance of winning, and I guess that 30% chance of him winning turned out to be true, but now it's not even half of that. It's like less than 538.com says 15% chance of Trump winning, 14 to 15%, but I honestly think it's even less than that, and I think that in the upcoming weeks, that number will continue to go down at least by quite a bit, probably to around 10% on election day. But there's also the chance he makes the comeback and maybe goes back up to like 20% or 30% even, like he did in 2016, the day before the election. On election day, election morning, Clinton had a 70% chance of winning, Trump had a 30% chance of winning. I guess the 30% chance came true for Trump. But let's also get back to the topic of this video now. I just wanted to talk about why this election is a blue wave. So yeah, Democrats currently have a majority in the House, and they're going to keep that majority almost certainly. It's a 95% chance that they keep a majority in relation to the 5% chance that Republicans gain a majority in the House. The thing with the Republicans is that they're already down over 30 seats in the House. They already have a 34 to 36 seat deficit in the House of Representatives against the Democrats, and making that up now is really, it's not going to be easy at all for them. It's going to be really tough for them to make up for 36 fewer seats in the House, 34 to 36 fewer seats in the House, when election day is only 3 weeks away now, and this is already shaping up to be a blue wave election. Same thing with the Senate, except that in the Senate currently Republicans hold a majority, but not the Democrats. Democrats only have 47 seats in the Senate, and that's if you include Bernie Sanders and Angus King. Republicans have 53 seats in the Senate. But here's the thing. Despite the fact that Republicans have at least 6 more seats in the Senate, 8 more if you don't count Bernie Sanders and Angus King, than the Democrats, FiveThirtyEight.com still gives the Democrats a better chance of gaining majority in the Senate after this election than the Republicans. That just shows you how much support Democrats have in this election cycle. I think a lot of people are not happy with the way Trump has handled the COVID-19 pandemic and its economic consequences, and because of that, a lot of people aren't really eager to vote for a Republican this election season. So a lot of people, even people that normally vote for Republicans, it seems like they're, in this election cycle, they're going to vote for a Democratic candidate both in the presidential election as well as their local elections, Senate and House elections. Yeah, Democrats have a much, much better chance of keeping a majority in the House of Representatives than Republicans do of gaining majority in the House of Representatives. In the last video I made on this, the model I looked at only gave Republicans a 2% chance of winning the House of Representatives, winning a majority, but I think that this model is a bit more accurate when it says 5%. I think 2% is a little too small of a percentage. I think 5% is a lot closer to reality for the chance that Republicans win a majority in the House. Either way, though, they have like next to no chance of that happening. I can almost certainly say, even more confidently than I can say about the presidential election, Democrats will keep a majority in the House after the 2020 House elections. The Senate election is a lot more up in the air. If you look at FiveThirtyEight's model for the Senate, it gives Democrats only like a 60-ish% chance of winning a majority in the Senate to Republicans 40%, so that's a lot more up in the air. I think with that, it could go either way, and one likely scenario for the Senate elections is that it's a perfect 50-50 split, and whenever there's a 50-50 split in the Senate, the vice president is the one that casts the tiebreaker vote. So really, the presidential election could also technically dictate who has a majority, who controls the Senate, which would be really interesting because that would put even more importance on this presidential election than there already is. I'd also like to show you this portion of the FiveThirtyEight.com prediction model. It looks at each individual congressional district and represents it on this map with a hexagon, and it shades in each hexagon based on how likely the Republican candidate is going to win that district or how likely the Democratic candidate is going to win that district. So like in all these Massachusetts districts, Democrats are almost certainly going to win all of them, and in all of them, they're all shaded solid blue. If you look at all these Massachusetts districts, more than 99% chance of a Democrat winning them. On the other hand, if you go to a state like Alabama, all these districts, all these hexagons, they're shaded in solid red because all these districts have a really, really good chance of electing a Republican to the House. Most of these districts say Republicans have more than 99% chance of winning these districts. So I think the vast majority of districts are pretty safe for one party or the other. I think less than a third are even like remotely toss ups in the House of Representatives. Less than a third of the districts. You can see here 194 of the districts are safe wins for Democrats, 155 are safe wins for Republicans, and in the middle you only have around 60 to 70 districts that are even remotely toss ups. So most of these House elections, they're safe wins for one party or the other, which really reduces the number of House elections that we really have to pay attention to, which makes things a bit simpler. But that also means that for a lot of these people, their vote's not going to matter that much because if one party has a huge lead against another party in a House election, then there's really not that much point of voting in them. I guess a lot of people feel that way because when you have one party doing this much better than another party, most people aren't going to feel the need to come out and vote, and they're not going to feel like their vote matters because the same party is going to win either way when the margin is so far apart between the two parties. But that is just something I observed. Most of the seats in the House of Representatives are safe for Republicans or Democrats. And there's also these graphs, three different graphs. It looks at the House of Representatives over time throughout 2020 and the chances of each party controlling the House over the course of 2020. I guess for here it only looks at beginning of August onwards, but it's been pretty consistent that Democrats had a much, much better chance of winning the House than Republicans did all throughout the past few months. In early August, Democrats had a 92% chance. Now they have a 94% chance. Nothing much has changed. Same thing with average seats controlled and popular vote margin. But if you look at the average seats controlled, it gives Democrats 237 and Republicans 198 as of now. Coincidentally, this is exactly the prediction that I made in my previous video on the topic. Democrats would have 237 seats, Republicans would have 198 seats. That's exactly what I said in my last video for my prediction for the outcome of the 2020 House elections. And because of this, I think I'm just going to keep my prediction exactly how it is. My prediction of 237 and to 198, 237 for Democrats to 198 for Republicans. That prediction I think still stands. I'm not changing it at all. The prediction I made around a bit less than 2 weeks ago, that's going to stay the exact same. And that will stay the same unless something major happens or something minor even, because when you have this many seats, one seat doesn't make a huge difference.